So, I'm dripping. So yesterday I was very proud because I went into the garden. I discovered that I had abandoned one of my favourite plants there for about 4 months. I'd completely forgotten this existed. And so I poured tons of water into it and it absorbed like all of it pretty much. Problem is, I'm not going to show them to you because they're kind of gross, but it's got like 3 little baby slugs coming out of here. So I feel bad. I feel like I've just kind of flushed them out of their home a bit. Made them slightly homeless, but equally it is my plant. I did pay for it. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Morning Bible. I won't be flushing out any more slugs this morning, I promise, and if I do I'll give you substantial warning so you can look away. Yeah, it was Easter yesterday for me, so that was really good fun, but this is now 2 days when you're seeing this after Easter. So again, I hope you had a good Easter. If you didn't, then I hope the rest of your week is better. Let's just jump right into it. We are going to be starting off Luke chapter 6 today. We got 2 little stories. It's only going to be 11 verses or so, but they have a strong theme linking them, and that is the theme of the Sabbath. So let's just go straight into it. So Luke chapter 6, starting from verse 1. On a Sabbath day, while he was going through the grain fields, this is Jesus again, while Jesus was going through the grain fields, his disciples plucked and ate some heads of grain, rubbing them in their hands. But some of the Pharisees said, "What are you doing?" Nope, they didn't say that. They said, "Why are you doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath?" So you remember again, the Pharisees, they were the teachers of the law, they were the guys who upheld all of the traditional Jewish laws, very stringent about all of them, kind of obsessive about it. And they kind of liked following Jesus around to call him out on things and tell him he was doing things wrong and, point out that he wasn't the Son of God wherever they could. But they kind of struggled because Jesus always has an answer to them. And so here they're asking, why are you doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath? And so the Sabbath day, I figured it would be good about now, since both of these passages kind of relate to the Sabbath, it would be good to go back quickly and see what is the Sabbath actually about? Why was the Sabbath made? And so there are a couple of readings that I've picked out from the Old Testament. I literally just Googled passages on the Sabbath in Old Testament. It's not that difficult to research. One of them is Genesis 2, Genesis chapter 2, verse 3, where it says, "Then God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all the work which God has created and made." And so essentially that one's coming at the end of the creation story, the creation of the world. So God spends 6 days making all the different things that are in the world. He creates light, he creates the waters and the skies, he puts animals into each of them, plants, all the rest of it, man and woman. And he does all of that in 6 days, and on the 7th day it says that God rested and sanctified that day. So even though he's God, even though he's all powerful and everything like that, he still chooses to have rest on the last day, which is really interesting. And it kind of gives us a model for how we should live our lives. And so with that said, in Exodus, which is the next book in the Bible, they start to formulate all of the laws that the Jewish people are going to follow, all of the laws that the Pharisees sort of obsess over. And so one of these laws is written here in Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 to 11. And the law says, "Remember the Sabbath, keep it holy. 6 days you shall not labour, 6 days you shall labour and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath day of the Lord your God." So they're basically saying, look, because God worked for 6 days and rested on the 7th, you shall do the same. In it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male or your female servant, or your cattle, or your sojourner who stays with you. So like your guests, people who've taken in, even your cattle. No one does any work. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and he rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blesses the Sabbath day and made it holy. And so that's what this sort of idea of the Sabbath is based on. That's where this is coming from. That's where these Pharisees are basing all of their knowledge and all of their things. And so they're following Jesus along, and they see Jesus' disciples walking through this field and picking some of the grains off the heads to eat because they're hungry. And the Pharisees are saying, no, that's work. That's work right there. What you're doing there that counts as work because you're technically harvesting some grain. And so Jesus turns around to them and he says this. He says, "Have you not read what David did when he was hungry? He and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God and took and ate some of the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for any but the priests to eat, and he gave it to those with them." So this is a bit of a niche story to pick out, but King David, who we've mentioned a couple of times before, he was a really important Old Testament king who wrote a lot of the Psalms. There is a story, it doesn't specifically say that this was on the Sabbath day, but there is a story where David was with all of his friends, and they were all really hungry, and they were near the temple where there was food offered up to God, and they went in and they ate some of the food. And Jesus is basically saying, look, David had authority from God to an extent. David was really sort of, God had really blessed him, God had given him authority, and so David could come in and do that, and it wasn't considered wrong for him to do that. And so Jesus then goes on and says, the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. So he's saying that's what David did, and you see David as being here. I'm telling you that I am the fulfillment of David's sort of lineage. I am, I'm the son of David, but I'm the son of God. I'm the Son of Man. I'm much, much bigger than David was. And so I am the Lord of the Sabbath. I'm in charge of the Sabbath. And so while these rules do exist for a reason, and they do apply for a reason, you've got to recognize that I am God, and I am bigger than these. I'm in charge of these. I am the source of these, and I am the fulfillment of these rules. So it's quite big claims. And so then we go on. So verse 6, this is the start of another story. It says, on another Sabbath, so this could be the week after, it could be months after, I don't know. On another Sabbath, I really can't say that. On another Sabbath, Jesus entered the synagogue and was teaching. And a man was there whose right hand was withered. So there was a guy who wanted healing from Jesus, essentially, who had a withered right hand. And the scribes and the Pharisees watched him to see whether he would heal on the Sabbath, so that they might find a reason to accuse him. So, like I said before, these guys aren't following Jesus to sort of learn from him or listen to him or anything like that. They're following him to catch him out, to see where he does something that technically breaks the Old Testament rules, so then they can accuse him of things and they can get him in trouble. It just sort of shows how corrupt and bad their hearts are, doesn't it? That they're following this guy around, trying to sort of sneakily get him in something. But he knew their hearts, Jesus knew their hearts. And he said to the man with the withered hand, "Come and stand here." And he arose and stood there. And Jesus said to them, he said to the Pharisees, the people who were watching him, "I ask you, is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or do harm? To save life or destroy it?" And after looking around at them all, he said to him, "Stretch out your hand." And he did so, and his hand was restored. But the Pharisees were filled with fury and discussed with one another what they might do with Jesus. And so Jesus here is offering a different challenge to the Sabbath. The first time around he's saying, look, I'm the Son of God. I'm the Son of Man. I am the Son of David. I'm all these things. I'm Jesus. Do you realise who I am? Of course, I'm in charge of the Sabbath. If my disciples want to pick some food and eat it because they're hungry on the Sabbath, that's totally okay with me. They can do a bit of work and get that food because I'm in charge of the Sabbath. I'm the Lord over it. So in this passage, it's a different challenge to it. He's essentially coming at it from more of a moral, kind of ethical standpoint, where he's saying, so you guys want to rest on the Sabbath, you guys won't do any work on the Sabbath. So what happens if you could do work and you could save someone and help someone do good in the world, essentially? Are you going to choose not to do that? Are you going to choose the wrong thing and ignore these problems just because it's the Sabbath day and you can use it as an excuse not to help someone? So Jesus is saying, look, I know it's the Sabbath, but I'm going to choose to do what's right anyway. I'm going to choose to work so that I can heal this person. He's he sees the rule that God put in place, and he sees that it isn't this overall like totalitarian sort of militant rule of you have to do rest, like 100% rest, no work at all. He says he sees that, but then he also sees someone in need, and he's like, hang on, this person who's in need actually, they need my help more than there is a need for me to fulfill this rest rule at this moment. And he's saying, obviously, don't throw the Sabbath out the window, but he's saying take it in balance with helping people as well. The Sabbath was a good day. God made the Sabbath to be good, and so you should do good things on the Sabbath. It's just a really cool couple of challenges. I really like it. And it's the fact that Jesus doesn't say like, oh, the Sabbath is done, the Sabbath is useless now, don't bother with it. He doesn't. He just says that you've got to see the Sabbath for what it is, and you've got to see who created the Sabbath and who is standing before you right now, because you'll realise that's one and the same person. It's just really cool. So hopefully, as you're having your rest this week, you'll also see opportunities to do good in that. Cool. We'll leave it there though. I love you lots, and I will see you all very soon. Much love.